Welcome to World Rowing's Coastal Race Module Keynote Series. In this session, we're going to be looking at watership skills, and specifically the skills of working the water in a race. My name's Batten. I'm a former Olympic medalist, coastal world champion. Let's get going. I hope you like my liberty that I've taken in this picture. You can see just in the bottom right hand corner a little coastal double scull making its way into the wave. Anyway, this session we're going to be talking all about working the water and watership skills. Just touching on the surface. It's an enormous subject and takes years to perfect, but hopefully give you a little bit of a head start and some insights into working the water and watership skills. So I'm going to explain what working the water means. I'm going to talk a little bit about the skills of rowing into, side on and down deep water waves. I'm going to look at some rough water rowing and touch on surfing beach waves. So working the water, what does it mean? Well, I believe it's the skill of drawing either the positive energy from the power of waves or reducing the negative energy from the power of waves. And it very much comes down to whether you're rowing up into the wave, you're rowing side onto a wave, or down a wave. And I think if you really, the fundamental principles of when you're going up into the wave is, of course, trying to reduce the negative energy that the wave is sucking out of the boat. So it's about keeping the boat moving and as flat as possible. So trying to be as efficient in that process while the waves are knocking you back. On the side waves, it's pretty just uncomfortable. There's not many advantages there other than being able to move very well underneath the side waves and watching out for any side breaking waves that might push the bow one way or the other. But down wave, it's the exciting stuff. It's about using the extra energy from the waves to add to your boat speed. And of course, something that I'll say again and again, if travelling at an angle to the wave, the fastest route is not always straight. And there's so many different occasions and reasons for doing that you'll gain as you get more and more experience rowing in waves. So if we think about upwave, and I talked about keeping as consistent speed as possible, avoid the crashing off the top of the waves because that absolutely just slows the boat down. You may actually need to drop your boat speed to be able to avoid crashing off the top of the waves, or you may want to travel up an angle so that you don't come down as sharply as you can. It's really technical for bow. They need to keep good rowing techniques, and there'll be times when there is no water for them to grab hold of, and there'll be times when, after a while their back's going to be taking quite a lot of jarring. And again, there's a real agility in changing the stroke rate and stroke length to adapt as the speed changes. So you're going to be going from stationary to full speed to stationary to full speed. So again, adapting your body angle and your body strokes to that. And really, if you've got a coxswain in the boat, make sure they call out for these waves, especially when the sets come, the bigger sets from the smaller sets. And if you haven't got a coxswain in the boat, feel for those sets. You should start to be getting a feel because what is behind you is what is in front of you. You can start to feel them as they come in. So let's talk about, let's have a little look at what that might look like. And we've got a really nice series of stills here from Lima, so a real ocean race at the World Coastal Championships. And you can see the crew here is starting to come up the face of what is a 2-meter wave, so a really deep, long, rolling wave. And the crew will be able to feel this. They'll be feeling that they're coming uphill. And then at the point when they're starting to get to the crest of the wave, it's really interesting. They need to now start to think about modifying their stroke if they don't want to come over the top of it too hard. Now, they may not be this particular wave, they're coming at it at an angle, so it may not be that difficult for them. But what's really interesting is if you look at this, you can see bow is in early on the stroke, on stroke. So I think she's modifying to row with the rhythm of the waves that are coming underneath them. And then you can see as the bow passes, as the boat passes over the crest of the wave, they're in the back stops position, so it pushes the bows down. And then you can see as they come over the peak, they come down the far side and the boat accelerates down the back of the wave. Absolutely fantastic, classy series of technical ways of rowing over the top of that wave. Let's talk about side on. Now, what I fundamentally believe, what I've learnt over a period of time, is that the different boats have different characteristics when they're rowing side on to the wind and waves. Some will turn down, some will turn into waves or the wind. And I think what's the critical skills is that the rowers adjust their stroke length and power from one side of the boat to the other. This does actually make it sometimes quite painful, and that's why it's not considered the most comfortable angle to row in. But by relaxing the body and allowing the boat to just move under you, you can keep a more stable boat. So there's some skills in here, but again, you've got to practice in the type of boat that you want to. From a safety perspective, if a wave breaks from the side, it's really important that crew react calmly and brace up. So you want to brace the boat. And I have actually been in a situation where you're surfing side on to a wave as it's come out of nowhere. And a lot of the athletes that I know can actually do that, brace quite well, and the boat won't capsize. Now, if the boat does get filled up with a breaking wave from the side, react calmly and quickly, and within one stroke the boat will be empty of water. A couple of the boats are impacted a little bit by free surface effect, and that just knocks the balance, and that's why it's really important to be calm, get the catch in, and empty that boat with one stroke. So when you're running with a cox or with a bow, ask them to keep their eyes out to make sure that if there's any topping out, breaking waves, that you're prepared and ready for them. And if the worst comes to the worst, you could actually push your bows into the face of those bigger waves. So let's talk about the bit that everybody loves, and that's down wave rowing. And that's really key bit here, is to get the energy from the waves to add to your boat speed. And again, it's about feel. So you're feeling the water, you're feeling the surge, the stall, and the surge. Okay, and it's about timing your acceleration to be able to catch that wave. And I often feel it's often the most skillful bit is being able to catch smaller waves rather than bigger waves. And again, there's a real skill here about, again, adapting your stroke rate and your length to the changing boat speed because of the stall and the surge. And then when you do surf that wave, you may well be up at 45, 46 strokes per minute, absolutely just trying to hold on to the steering of the boat. Riding the speed of the wave, that's a real skill. So if you overrun the wave that's coming from behind, you will come off it and you'll come into the back of the next one. Or if you stall, your speed goes too slow, you'll get dropped off it. So sometimes you may want to actually, rather than come down the wave at 90 degrees, you may want to come down the wave at 80 or 75, depending on the speed of that wave and your boat speed. Steering, as I said, once the boat speed's picked up, and holding on to that directional stability is really important. And because in the boats we are steering using pressures, that sharpness of the catch on either side is really important. That's why don't undergear your boat and don't rate too low when you start surfing. And then I guess for me, inexperienced crews, and I've seen it so often, I've done it myself, tend to use too much energy for too little return when they're racing. So initially they may get some big wins, but then they can't sustain those. So yeah, So really, downwind rowing, downwind, downwave rowing is so much fun, and it is probably the biggest skill in working the water or watership skills. So let's have a little look. I've made some graphics here about how to catch that wave, that bump or runner, and they're termed very differently in different parts of the world. So typically angle yourself 90 degrees onto the wave. The actual location on the waves, the bows should be running slightly downhill, and then you want to adjust your boat speed to match that of the wave behind, to catch that wave. The crew needs to react with feel. Okay, if you're waiting for calls to catch a wave, they will be too slow, and the timing will be off. Okay, so just follow stroke. Make sure your stroke person's really feeling the rhythm. And if you're in a dodgy wave, make sure, or a risk wave, make sure you shaft and stall and get off that wave early. But let's have a little look. I've made this graphic. So you're at the point here at the bottom of the back of the wave where the crew will feel the suck down. So the boat starts to be sucked and slowed down before it starts to release. Just at that moment, before the release starts to take place, it's really important at that moment that the crew lean back and push the water away. So absolutely, so that the boat speed can match the speed of the wave. And what you'll then find is the stern is lifted and it's just starting to run downhill. Okay, at that point, the critical point to be on the wave is to make sure that the boat is running as flat as possible, because once it starts to get too steep, it will start to stall. Okay, and I've drawn this massive picture here of the wave at the back. It's never going to be that big, but you really want, especially in a quad, you want that wave running just behind the stern here, and you want to stay in front of that wave, drawing the energy out of it. This is what it feels like if you don't catch it. You're in that position where you feel the suck down before the release. If you don't get your pull properly in, your big stroke in to get the boat speed up, to get this to match the speed of the wave, what's likely to happen is the wave will pass through you, okay, and you will stall again. Don't worry, there'll be another wave to come in behind. So let's have a little look at a series of stills again. Now these are quite long, steep waves here, so you can see at this point in A, the rower here, he's running down the face of that wave, and he's taking the energy from that wave. And you can see at the point where the peak is passing through his boat, he's just starting to stall out of it, and then you can see he's no longer gaining energy from it, and he's going to fall back behind the wave, and he'll pick up and ideally pick up the next wave behind. So let's have a look. What does this feel like if you're in a race situation? So here you can see great pictures of stills here. I've got 3 boats here, and this lead boat here, in fact this is Peterberg from Sweden, he's about, I think, 1 meter clear of the 2 boats behind him, and they're riding the same sets, the same deep sets of green waves. And you can see in B here, Peter has just been able to catch that wave where his opposition didn't catch it as much as him. Okay, so he was able to work that water, and he worked that water to give himself a half a boat length or a boat length gain. And you can see here it's a whole boat length gain on that crew behind him. Okay, now if you can imagine, we've got these wave periods at every 10 seconds. So if you can imagine, in every minute he's taking out a 1 boat length. He could be 6 boat lengths ahead every minute because he's able to work the energy of those wave sets coming behind. So fascinating, and a real skill, something that doesn't happen overnight, and often you'll find it's the small little bits of energy that you gain that is the difference between winning a race downwind and not winning that race downwind. Let's have a little look at rough water rowing. And I think, some of that stuff into the headwind and into the side waves, etc., will come out here. Probably a lot of the places that we race when we do endurance is in harbours. And what you have with harbours is you've got refracted waves coming off the harbour wall. So actually they're really confused. So rather than the lovely smooth green waves that I've been talking about in Lima, you know, here we've got some race that was held at the World Championships in 2014 at Thessaloniki. It's pretty rough. It was a harbour. But what I want you to do when you watch the video is the crew. This is again another crew from Sweden, from Helsingborg, where they have multi-directional waves in their stretch of water, but they're not transmitting the extreme movement of the boat into their bodies, and they're focused on the relaxation and the keeping rowing. They've got to keep calm and carry on style. Okay, just the boat is bouncing all over the place. Very short, confused waves. This is in the warm-up actually to the start of the championships. Okay, just coping really nicely over those. There's a tiny bit at the end of their opposition that aren't doing quite as well. Just sort of highlights the excellence that you had in that really relaxed row that the guys were showing. So let's have another example, and this example here is from Hong Kong. Again, another harbour venue, and it's the mixed double scull from Ukraine. And what they've got here is they've got a boat again is moving under their relaxed bodies, and their hands are creating this space for the boat to roll and rock under the waves. And it's not just the Ukrainians. Some of the other crews in this race have demonstrating really good rough water rowing. Again, really nicely relaxed as they come through here. So now let's look at beach waves. So this is the waves where white waves or beach waves are slightly different characteristics. Really important how we're going to understand how the boat operates. We need to understand the effect of the shape. If we look at the bow profile of a coastal rowing boat, we know that it's low volume, narrow profile, and tends to be wave piercing. So they prefer to go through the waves rather than being pushed up over the top. If we look at a surf boat that's specifically designed for rowing in the surf, got a high volume bow, they have a spoon bow, and they tend to lift up. It's designed to lift up over those waves. Now, if we go to the other extreme and we look at offshore yachts, what's really interesting is they've got a low profile bow. It's narrow, okay, a low volume, and they tend to wave pierce. Okay, so I would probably say the behavior of the coastal rowing boats through waves is more similar to an offshore yacht than to a surf boat. Let's look at the same again. Let's compare the same again for the stern profile. So if we look at the surf boat, it's got a pintail stern, so it's got quite a lot of traction at that back end of the stern of the boat. It's got a really great big rudder that's sticking out quite a long way out the back of the boat, and you can see it's called a sweep, and you can see his oar that sticks out the back. And again, we know surf boats, they're brilliant in surf. Now if we look at a coastal boat, it's got this flat open stern. There's no deep rudder because we're coming up onto the beach, and we have this a small fin underneath, and we know that these boats surf brilliantly in green waves, and in fact it's very hard to not let them surf. I've been in conditions where I've had to keep trying to stop letting them surf. We also know that if you look at the back end of an offshore yacht, they've got these flat open sterns. They actually do have a deep rudder, and they're great in green waves. Now these yachts do in the Southern Ocean have a problem of broaching in the same way that the coastal boats have a real issue of broaching as they operate in white water waves. So when we're coming into a beach, we've got this white wave, it's very aerated, and it's quite hard for the boat to hold any directional stability as it comes in. And so one of the real key things when you're doing a controlled surf in a white water wave, and this graphic, by the way, is enormous. We would never be in waves with this big. What you're really trying to do is to keep that wave at the stern of the boat and try keeping the boat flat. Okay, so at the point where your boat starts to be running bow down, you're at the point where the wave is starting to overtake the boat. And that's really not a great point. So you can see here, you can see this picture here where the bow is pointing down, the wave is starting to come down through the boat, and if the shape of the beach is such, we'll do a boat upend or we'll just do a broach. So really, if the waves are big like that and you can't do a controlled surf, you've got two options. One of them is to come in between a small set of waves and come in at the same speed, or the other one is to get off that wave. And one of the ways of doing that is to stall your boat speed. And what's great with our oars, we can stall really easily. Okay, so we've got a picture here on the right hand side where got a double scull, and you can see the boat is starting to nosedive and the wave is coming down through the boat, and the boat is no longer running flat. The wave is not behind the stern. And really what your aim there is to slow the boat down using the shaft of the blades as brakes. It's very responsive, and it's as simple as, it's a bit like an emergency stop on river rowing. You slightly reverse square the blades, and by dropping the wrists down, the blades will dive into the water and the handles will come up. If you push them up against your chest, that means you will hold them in place and they won't be whipped past you. As you lean the body forward, both hands on your chest, the boat will gradually start to drop off in boat speed and the wave will pass through. The wave will pass through the boat, and then you get rowing as quickly as you can before the next wave comes in behind you. So in essence, you're coming in the trough of the wave. Now, of course, this has to be quite a distinctive reaction, and so I can't stress enough, practice doing this. You know, go out there, get on a wave, stall off a wave, practice again and again, so that you can go out in bigger stuff. So let's have another little look if something goes slightly wrong when you've got a wave. And we've got an example here. So this is Peter Berg coming in at the end of a World Championship race. He's been out, he's pretty tired, he's done his 6 kilometers, and he's just really coming into the beach before he's going to jump out the boat and make his way up to the finish line. And you can see here the boat's travelling at the same speed as the wave. He hasn't got the energy to bring it in anymore. He's just coming in being cautious. But because he's travelling at the same speed, the bow's being pushed down and the boat is about to broach. And you can see in the second picture here, it's already starting to run at an angle to that wave. Now, Peter's got a couple of options here, but because he's so skilled as an athlete, he knows exactly what's going on. What he does is he braces up. And so you can see here, he's bracing up and he comes in sideways, surfing in sideways on that little bit of a wave, and he just then steps out of the boat and comes up onto the beach. So in this session, we looked at working the water. What does it mean? We looked at some of the skills of rowing into, side on and down deep water waves. We looked at how to get bumps, and we looked at rough water rowing, some fantastic examples of videos that I shared. And then we just touched on surfing beach waves and how to stall off a risk wave, or how to brace and come in if you've broached as you come in off a wave. Well done on completing this keynote. If you want to learn more about the exciting things that are going on in coastal rowing around the world, head over to worldrowing.com. See you on the water.